if the world is a very complex and chaotic place at the end, and it's not ruled by 20, 30, 50 people, it puts way more emphasis on every individual to do the right thing in his own small community, in a bigger context. But like, sort of, I think people secretly, with this whole conspiracy stuff, what I said before, they wish to simplify the world, and they wish to give responsibility away because, there are people who running that, they're bad, at least they're running it. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
And the truth is, you are responsible.
Yeah, we're running it.
We're running it all together. And everybody of us is a small piece of it, and you're responsible for yourself, for your soul, for your close friends. I think that is what really should be the takeaway.
If you're like me, you've probably heard a lot of things about the World Economic Forum, but probably never talked to anybody who was a part of the World Economic Forum. Christian Angermeyer is a part of the World Economic Forum and has a radically unique perspective, along with being one of the most prolific entrepreneurs in the psychedelic medicine space. And his perspective I found to be nuanced and invaluable. So I really encourage listening to this conversation with Christian Angermeyer. Christian, thanks for coming out here.
Thanks for having me.
Here in Miami. I have never done this before on any podcast ever in my life, but I'm actually going to read your bio.
Oh my God.
From Atai. And I went to that page and I was just looking at it, and it's so fucking interesting that I want to read it, and then it'll kind of be like a little bit of a map for us to talk about a few different areas. All right, so I'm gonna go through this. Christian Angermeyer, actually, is that how you pronounce your name?
Yeah, it was fairly perfect.
Fairly perfect. Is an entrepreneur and investor and the founder of Apeiron Investment Group, his family office and merchant banking services. Apeiron focuses on financial services, especially FinTech and crypto assets. So let's put a little asterisk. I want to talk about FinTech and crypto assets, technology, life sciences, media and entertainment, and real estate and prop tech. Apeiron completes deals across the entire life cycle and balance sheet of a company. More about Apeiron. In 2000, Christian co-founded RiboPharma, original patents for RNAi technology, which merged with the stock market listed US-backed, blah, blah, blah. 13 billion market cap today. You've raised over 2 billion for portfolio companies, been involved in more than 50 successful IPOs and M&A transactions as an entrepreneur, investor, or banker advisor. One of the most significant investors in European fintech companies. Again, asterisk on fintech, because I've never really talked about that, with a special focus on cryptocurrencies and blockchain-related business models. Let's see, we have some info about cryptology, which we could get into, the shareholder of Block One and those tokens. The biotech company Atai Life Sciences, you have the ambitious goal to develop solutions for more than 300 million people who suffer from depression, especially by bringing back formerly vilified drugs, very true, like psychedelics into the legal realm. With the biotech companies Rejuveron and Cambrian, Christian is developing drugs and technologies which have the potential to significantly prolong the human lifespan and ultimately defeat death. Okay, big asterisk there about places to go in the podcast. So we got a few things already. In addition to the entrepreneurial activities, Christian places great value on social, political, and societal commitments. He is a young global leader of the World Economic Forum. Asterisk there. There's a lot of stuff that's talked about the World Economic Forum. And I want to know, you probably have a better insight than me looking at shit on Instagram. So I definitely want to talk to you about that. A member of the Presidential Advisory Council for His Excellency President Paul Kagame of Rwanda. That's random and really fucking cool.
Yeah,
good job.
Let's talk about it. My favorite country.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. All right. A board member of Vienna-based Hayek Institute, a libertarian and free markets-focused think tank. My father was a libertarian, and I've always really identified with those politics, probably more than if I had to choose a political party, that would probably be it, although I'm a bit apolitical given what I've seen. And we had a nice little intro conversation on politics, so maybe a little asterisk there about libertarianism, free market ideas, politics. Member of the court of the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. Tropical medicine sounds cool. Let's see. You have forums where you bring a bunch of Christian Angermeyer's Policy and Innovation Forum convenes several times a year for head of states, including politicians, investors, and scientists to discuss crucial topics and issues. And then another turn, which is, wild and really paints the picture of like the complexity of you as a podcast guest and a human. Passionate about the arts and film, Christian has executive produced 21 feature films, including critically acclaimed movies like Filth, Aspirin Papers, and Hector and the Search for Happiness. The largest shareholder of DAG, live entertainment company in Europe, producing over 4,500 shows a year. And finally, last asterisk, you have a unique collection of art centered around the theme psychedelics and entheogens. I, too, have a good collection of art centered around psychedelics and entheogens.
Great.
So
Where do you want to start? Exactly.
Here we are. Well, there are a lot of really interesting places to go there. And because I think we should just go fairly chronologically from that and, explain. Obviously, you've had a massive success in business in a variety of different areas. FinTech, which is short for financial technology, is one of these areas of focus and has, as blockchain and crypto kind of enters the space. I would just love to enter your mind as to what you're seeing for the evolution of money and the evolution of financial instruments and kind of what's on the emerging bleeding edge that you're really looking at there.
Good question. Where do we start? Meaning, in generally, because cryptocurrencies became such a big term, and then you saw all the bad stuff like last year from the fall of Luna. Then obviously FTX was just fraud, like which can happen in any industry. But I like to actually.
You think that was an interesting one? FTX was just fraud, but I think people blamed crypto for it in a weird way, right? Like almost like crypto got a bad brand hit. Because
because crypto already had the reputation of being unregulated, or very little regulated, which is true, which also is part of the charm because you see normally the sort of the strongest innovation with less regulation. So regulation is a double-sided sword. So you sometimes want it because there is an element of protection, and then it also regulation, if overdone, is not really fostering innovation, and it's hard to find a balance. And normally, at the beginning, nobody wants regulation because it seems to go well, and then when things go wrong, like FTX, then people call for it. It's the old cycle which happens practically in any new industry. But meaning, if you boil it down, FTX seems, at least from the outside, luckily we were not sort of in this neither investor or not anything. Burned by it, but from the outside view, it seems like it's just fraud. I mean, just don't want to play it down, but fraud can happen in any industry. Somebody can, I don't know, have many. Enron was a fraudulent energy company. Right. So, and I also, in generally, I believe as sort of, and I don't want to discount that. Obviously, thousands and thousands of customers, which is the very bad thing, lost money because they took customer money and sort of were lending it practically to themselves. But it's a little bit like with, I always say, with murder, with any other bad thing, it's illegal. We outlaw it as society, but it still happens. But the solution is not that we say, look, there would be definitely less very bad murder cases if nobody would ever go out again and we just stay in our apartment. Right. But that's not the solution. And the solution is also not throwing, I don't know if it's an English expression, but in Germany, you say throwing the child out with the bath. Baby out with the bathwater. So it's and that is always my worry. Yes, we have to think about, is there sensible regulation, which the crypto industry should adopt? But also just because one person or one group of people really did bad stuff, this is not the industry in itself.
Understood.
But coming back to the big question of future of currencies, I always like to take Bitcoin sort of apart from the rest, because sort of Bitcoin for me is really, this is why I even don't really like the term, even if I used it in my own CV, cryptocurrency industry, because the main thing, and we got a little bit distracted from it over the last years with the hype, but the main thing really is Bitcoin, which from my point of view stands the test of time. As what I see it mainly is digital gold. So if you look at human history, humans always want actually let's call it a store of value. So the critics might say, but Bitcoin went down as well. Yeah. But like you want something, let's say maybe in that way, which is not touchable by the government.
Yep.
Yeah. And humans always have it. Yeah. So, and by the way, why? Because if you go
cash in your mattress.
Yes. So
you
it
know,
is
gold.
But the problem with
gold,
cash,
even a pinky ring with a diamond on it was an old gangster way to store money on your person, right?
So and gold has, because then people say, oh, but Bitcoin has no value. Bitcoin But like gold has no value. You can't eat it. It's very little used in.
But it's so shiny though.
It's shiny, but like but we like it because maybe it's shiny, maybe because like. But what the fact is that gold has not a real use case. Yeah, it's actually even fairly hard to transport, whatever. But we agreed as humans that gold should be given a value as a kind of store of value. Yeah, and it's so ingrained, and it's definitely the most successful store of value. But we had others.
And also because it's scarce.
Yes,
it had just the right amount of scarcity.
As a fun fact, which I just learned, which is, by the way, if you look at what gold is, Bitcoin is extremely modeled on it. So gold cannot be produced on Earth. It's one of these rare metals which practically came literally from outside. So the Earth was seeded with gold from asteroids and comets.
Wow.
Yeah, in our early days, and maybe still something is falling down, but like it cannot be produced here. So the amount of gold on Earth is finite. And we're mining it. And by the way, exactly like Bitcoin, like while, I don't know, what was it, like 8 years ago, you could mine a Bitcoin for $100. Yeah, it gets harder and harder. The same in the medieval ages, gold was way more prevalent.
Yep.
Yeah, people were mining it in Europe, whatever. Now we mined everything already. And now it gets harder and harder. Yeah, but there is a finite end because gold, there's just a finite amount of gold. And it's the same. So Bitcoin in many, many ways copied the model of gold. And by the way, I do believe they can be there both at the same time. It's like, it's not because then will gold be worthless? No, I think for a long period of time, humans will have both. But why not? But we had many, many periods of time where we had many stores of value, silver, whatever, pearls, like maybe cows. Like it's always what we just agree on to be a store of value. And if you look at Bitcoin, it's actually even the better gold because it can be sent very easily. Yeah, it can be transported. And by the way, there is a complete difference of how maybe people in America look at Bitcoin and then talk to people in Venezuela or in Argentina or in Ukraine. Yeah, they are like, okay, I really want something. Their currencies are shit. Yeah, and they want something they can take and leave a country, which is still actually a thing in big parts of the world. It's just luckily we can say not in Europe and in the US. Yeah, and then lastly, by the way, I always say like think about that way, like. Every single currency in the history of humanity has always been destroyed by the government somewhere. There's not a single currency which is there since a really long period of time. And if it's there, I think the oldest currency is the sterling, then it's massively devaluated because politicians always abuse the currencies.
They just print more cash.
Yeah. So, and that's why we need a store of value.
And that's the thing about gold and Bitcoin. There's a limit on the amount of Bitcoin and there's a limit on the amount of gold. Cash, there's no limit. And that's why when you want more money and you can just hit go on the digital printer. I mean, people actually think of printing sheets of money, but that's just cash. Real money is just created with the click of a cursor on a very, very protected machine somewhere in the Federal Reserve. But that's what happened. That's what we saw during the pandemic, of course. So, all right. So
I'm a big believer, that's the short version. I'm a big believer in Bitcoin, mainly. So, and then by definition then, or as a consequence, I'm a big believer in all the industries adjacent to Bitcoin, which is like crypto mining or Bitcoin mining, which is like exchanges. And so then you have some really valuable platforms like Ethereum where you can really build on. But to be fair.
So is that more like, that's more like silver or copper in that
you
analogy?
See like that, that's more, you can say because silver has a use case. Yes, exactly. That's actually a good analogy. Like it's this thing because these platforms and tokens have a use case because you can develop applications
like copper wires and copper, things like that. So that's what the other currencies are like. One is a store of value. The other is like, all right, these are metals that we can use for different. So
and then you have the tulips. If you remember the tulip mania, like because then unfortunately over the last years, people just wanted more and more and crazier and crazier.
Okay, so the tulip, what you're talking about is for in the Dutch history?
Yes.
Tell the tulip story. It was like
well,
1850s.
I don't know the century. I think it was the 16th century. I don't want to say the wrong time, but
I think it might have been 1850.
Yeah, or
but I don't know.
later, yeah. But someone in the Dutch history,
Yeah.
people suddenly gave value to tulip. What is it called?
Tulip bulbs.
Yeah, the bulbs. Yeah, and they became insanely expensive. Like, and people somehow told themselves that there is a reason why this is happening. And then one day they woke up and were like,
yeah, and everybody invested all of their money in
Yeah.
tulips, and they were like, "What the fuck are we actually doing?"
Yeah.
And then the tulip market crashed, and then people lost massive stores of wealth.
Yeah, so it never was a store of wealth, but that's actually
well, they gave money to some tulip. Well, they at least moved a bunch of wealth
yes.
to whatever
Yes.
tulip
Yeah.
farmers and tulip, middlemen and merchants were out there, right?
Yeah, so but that sort of is like, I think, a very good description of the crypto world. You had Bitcoin as sort of the original and really most important, if you want to call it cryptocurrency. Then you had sort of some very valuable protocols to build on,
Yeah.
Ethereum, Solana, whatever. And then you had suddenly hundreds and thousands of crazy projects, which were the tulips. And I think it's very, very healthy what is happening now, although it's obviously not nice for people losing money. But I think it needs to go through this cleansing process, and the blockchain crypto industry needs to concentrate back on the good stuff, which is Bitcoin plus very few tokens.
What do you think about do you think that there's a risk that governments and world governments would, and this may even, bridge into the World Economic Forum discussion, push cryptocurrencies out of the market by creating central bank digital currencies to replace them, and then kind of outlawing cryptocurrencies in that way?
Well, first thing is, I think it's not a competition. So central bank created digital currencies will definitely come because it makes a lot of sense to digitize the dollar and the euro, just because it makes it easier to handle. You could, in a certain way, I know that's the worry, is like, say, it makes it easier to control, but I don't mean control the people, but like just to know what is your float out there, whatever. As you said, now it's a little bit like how many cashes are there. So central bank digital currencies make sense, but they are the same. By the way, it's just a digital.
I think actually I think everybody would be cheering for it. Absolutely. Like, come on, central bank, digitize this currency if we trusted our governments.
True. Yeah. But even if you don't, it doesn't make it really fully worse. It's sort of the same-ish if you're not a money launderer or whatever. I always think like people worry about the wrong stuff in life. That's
people are worried about like social credit scores and what's happening in China, where they're linking money. Like you go to the gas station, and all of a sudden, you put out a political statement, or you put out something on, health freedom or some other thing like that, and all of a sudden you get restricted from spending your money, right? Like that's what people are worried about. Do you think that's a real fear, or is this just like paranoia playing out in the zeitgeist around central bank digital currencies?
Well, definitely they can be, again, I would say they're neutral in itself, but if a government wants to use them to exercise more control, as you describe it, I think it does work. Yeah. So yes. Yeah. So, but that is, by the way, technology in general. These are the same people. They should then say, I don't want a mobile phone because the government knows at any certain point where I am. Yeah. So that's the only thing. Most of the people, I'm not saying that I'm dismissive of the fear of these things, but if you really fear that stuff, you need to avoid a lot of things because you already give away everything to Google, to your phone, to Apple, whatever. Like, so this is what is not fully cohesive how people behave. So the same people who would say, oh, I'm very afraid of a digital currency, they are very much using WhatsApp and whatever. Like, yeah. And the truth is that technology makes us more controllable if the government wants it. So we should actually place the focus on how can we keep a better government. Exactly. And how can we keep the freedom, which we still have, by the way. The West is like, you can say a lot about, but like, if you look at China, for example, I'm very much want to live in Europe and the US and not in China. So we do. Yeah. And I think we underappreciate that freedom we still have. And I would say it's fairly intact. Yeah. But we should put more political focus on it. Yeah. To keep it.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been encroached upon in the last few years, and I think that's why people are getting concerned. Doctors getting unable to share their own opinions and certain political things, even the Twitter files releasing the Hunter Biden laptop suppression. I mean, that's just out there. That's actually what happened, right? There's suppression of truth for political, political aims.
Yeah, weirdly though, by a private company.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
but it was pressure from the White House to Twitter, and but
which
Twitter
fell
was
on very
company.
frugal ground. I don't want to excuse Biden's team for doing that, but I
Yeah.
think the bad people are the ex-Twitter people. Yeah, which was a private company. I'm just saying, you need to. The danger comes not. Yeah.
No. Yeah,
but I agree.
I think having a bigger picture of the empire itself, and knowing that everything's kind of intermingled, business and government and tech. And I think that whole techplex that includes politics and is separate, it's interwoven and separate because of campaign contributions, et cetera. There's a lot of connection points, and I think people are afraid of that. But what I feel actually emerging in my own mind is a new way of thinking, thanks to what you're sharing, is look, technology is rolling in, it's coming in, and it's going to give access to more control for the powers that want to control. So we're not going to be able to stop technology. It just makes too much sense. It makes too much sense. So since we can't stop technology, we actually have to take a stand for our freedoms and for what we believe is good, true, beautiful, and right against those powers that may want to abuse it, and actually take a stand.
100%. This is why, by the way, what Elon Musk is doing, as so many people criticize him, it's amazing because he's giving
I agree.
freedom of speech back to a platform, which is super essential, although it's still a private company.
Yeah. So, I think it's an important reframe to actually just think look, stop trying to fight the technology. You can put your little Band-Aid over the camera on the back of in the front of your laptop because you're worried they're going to watch you jerking off to your own porn. But nobody wants to filter through your 185 hours of masturbation. I'm telling you.
By the way, this is a fun anecdote. I had several conversations with friends in government, secret services about this fun, what can you see? And the answer is always, if we want, we can see a lot. But first of all, who wants to? They were I don't want to see your pictures, or whatever you store on your phone. But then it's also very cumbersome still. For example, if somebody technically could read all your WhatsApp, which is possible if you wanted, but then it's a lot of WhatsApp.
For sure.
So you need humans still. Maybe AI is catching up with it, but you would still need humans to make sense of it. So, and then 99.9%, or hopefully 100%, what you and I would say on WhatsApp, is maybe offensive or is maybe funny or whatever, but it doesn't touch the government. So they want to catch terrorists, whatever. So there, although I know what is technology-wise possible, I'm actually fairly relaxed. But I do think, coming back, we should focus as a society that our political system sort of is keeping that freedom. And that is actually, I think, a value which needs to be defended, as we see now. Because weirdly, what they call, I would say, the left, because I also think it's very confusing sometimes to still use the terms left and right, because it doesn't fit really anymore.
Yeah, exactly. But everything has evolved very much.
That interestingly, the left, who was fighting the last century for freedom, for individual rights, whatever, is now rather sort of, no, let's take it back during COVID, whatever. That's unfortunately a weird twist of history.
Yeah, it seems like actually parties are more just interested in what is the way to win. They're just in this finite game thinking of how do we win at all cost? And even they're not guided by first principles and values necessarily. They're all right, where's the advantage? How do I win? It's they're locked in this game of chess.
Yeah, or as we said before, it's almost like a telenovela or an entertainment thing for voters. Yeah, which I also think is partly the good thing, that as a European, if I look at US politics, there is a lot of craziness on the surface. Yeah, and that's what keeps people glued to the TV or the internet or whatever. But the policies then are actually on both sides still fairly rational, nuanced. You see that, by the way, now the China policy of Biden is fairly the same than the Trump policy on China. Because it's geopolitically the right thing to do for America to try to contain China. Trump maybe voiced it differently, and had a different sort of theater around it, but factually, it's very much the same.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you were sharing earlier, is you're sharing that there's this huge political theater happening, but then actually when you look at what happens in the administration, you actually see people making fairly rational choices, fairly rational decisions.
Let's hope that stays that way, but that's my observation, from a sort of outsider European on the US. Mm-hmm. By the way, coming to a World Economic Forum question, because it's funny, there is no, I'm always jokingly say, I think I met a lot of people who are always named on the internet, individuals, as being part of a big conspiracy. Right. And either they completely left me out of that, but then they're not good friends, or no, and the sad...
You're like, where's the conspiracy party?
Exactly. No, where is it?
Young global leader, World Economic Forum. Where do I pledge my blood to Satan?
Exactly. Jesus, I get comments on that. But the fact is, on a serious note, I think that it's very hard till impossible in our days to really do a conspiracy. Because a conspiracy needs kind of secrecy, you need to share information. I think the world is not able, and now I'm saying something controversial, maybe we would need a bit of it, because I think, again, too much of politics is happening at sort of the world stage in terms of everybody's watching. And I think there are points in history, and there are negative examples as well for what I'm saying, but I think at some points people might want to talk in private, one head of state to the other. Because if everything happens, as you said before, not to find the right solution, for example, if there is a conflict arising, but if everything is geared towards how do I look to my voter? How do I look to my constituencies, whatever, that makes sometimes solutions harder. So in a weird way, I think, first of all, it's not possible to do conspiracies today because the world is too transparent. And maybe the world would need, let's not use the word conspiracy in that term, but the world would need a little bit more secrets or politicians being able to. Well, for example, what I hate at the moment is that several European leaders are criticized for still talking to Putin. But if you want to find a way out of that mess,
you got to talk to him.
You got to talk to him. It's not saying you shouldn't give anything to him, but at least you shouldn't talk to him. So we are in a world where suddenly even the talking in itself is you can't do that. I was but then what's happening then?
That's a crazy idea. So there's a couple things. One is, we brought the Hunter Biden laptop in there, and that was actually a conspiracy, right? Because the government then went to Twitter and then said, hey, suppress this, and Twitter did it and then lied about doing it. So in a way, it's a little baby conspiracy. There was secrecy.
Yeah, baby conspiracy, but it's something which happened, which was not secret. So it's maybe missing the secret element because people knew about it. It was more like a cartel. The media. It's not I think there's a nuance.
Yeah, but what I think you're talking about is the secret society conspiracy theory, right? There are conspiracies that happen. There was a conspiracy between the White House, Twitter, and the media to actually keep this information from coming out, right? So that's a small little conspiracy, which is basically we're working together in secret to do something that we're not telling people about. And that happens a lot. Yeah. But what you're saying is,
it still comes up, thanks God. It came up back then, but so it's sort of, I agree. Yeah.
And then, but what you're saying is all right, this whole secret society, backroom plan to do all of these different things is, you're look, I'm a young global leader in the World Economic Forum. I haven't been invited. These things aren't real. That's basically what you're saying, right? Well, it's there is no them that's out there figuring this shit out.
I just saw it today that they now, which I think is wrong, by the way, because the World Economic was meant to bring people together originally, what is it now, 40 years ago, to discuss things in private. And by the way, it's in a marriage. It's every problem you and your wife would ever have, hopefully you have none, but you might have one once in a while, and you're forced to do it always on your podcast in front of the whole world. No, somewhere that would break because you need that moment.
It's like the Kardashians at that point.
Well, exactly. So we're obsessed with that.
So it becomes a show.
And now the World Economic Forum is is, I think, completely online. Like people can log in and see anything. Like sort of, and what does it mean? Like you don't need to go to any session anymore because nobody says anything. Like because the CEOs, they're sitting there, they script it. Like
because now it's public. Nobody's actually
you
talking.
Could still say some maybe people meeting behind the doors, but like it's all becoming, because like you can't even have like meeting or the sessions like a while ago, they were still private, even if 50 people were, and that made people a little bit more comfortable because we live in that world, which even in our podcast, I'm like thinking and sitting here like, who could, because I don't care, but like, I always decide not to care because I think otherwise you become a lame douche, but like, seriously, like, no, like I'm so annoyed about this political correctness, especially in the US, but like, I even see it with myself. You have always this sort of thing in your head, like, okay, what is if I say one sentence which taken out of context, can be completely misinterpreted. You have to say I don't give a fuck, but like, it's most CEOs do give a fuck, like sort of, and that's bad. And I think this is the real evil. I think not conspiracy theories, not politics show. The real evil of our times is this sort of wrongly. There was a good element in political correctness when it was intended to really protect people.
Right.
Obviously you shouldn't be rude. But by the way, your parents should have learned, tell you that you shouldn't be rude to people. But like that completely went insane into these speak police and thought police and whatever. Which is weirdly not even coming from the government. It's coming from a marginalized or a small part of society which found ways like Twitter to enforce that. But I think there is always an element of willingness on the other side because nobody's forcing me to be politically correct or be too overly woke. That's why I'm deciding not to be it. Like I think the real lame people are like maybe 100 CEOs. If you think about it, what happens? Like somebody says something, it's taken out of context. There is a big Twitter wave. Which is completely meaningless. Twitter is completely meaningless. So all that stuff, because I still 80-90% of people I know don't read Twitter. So, but this wave is building up, and somewhen it's reaching a boardroom or it's reaching an investor, whatever. And then somewhen a cowardish CEO is like, oh, if I don't say anything about this employee who said something apparently wrong, whatever, it could be bad. There is some business guy at the end. And if 100 CEOs would say, we don't give a fuck about that, nobody would care after a certain period of time, because then suddenly that wave of agitation would be very boring because there would be no consequence, and there shouldn't be any consequence.
Well, I mean, this is obviously a nuanced topic, and I think the impetus for people's vices to be like transparent, I think, was good when they're actual vices. If somebody's being actually abusive, actually sexually abusive, actually racist, like, of course, like that's not cool. Like, let that go out.
Exactly.
Like, so there's actual
but then
real
we should
shit.
have known before.
There's actual real shit about it. And then there's also but it goes farther and farther and farther and gets weaponized. And what you're saying is, back in the day, when the mob got riled up, got agitated, they would come with ropes and pitchforks and fire, and actually to your physical body, and tragically, millions of people, I think the estimates are 9 million witches got burned in Europe, quote, witches, which were probably doing the same things that you're doing in your labs, really, like they were probably working with the same plants and psychedelic medicines and consciousness, same thing I've been doing. I mean, I would have been burned 1,000 times over as a warlock, I guess, as a male witch. But nonetheless, like, it actually had physical consequences to your flesh. Now, when the mob comes, they have pixels that make words on screens, but not pitchforks. And yes, I know sometimes it can affect your job and sometimes it can affect something else in your life, but we're actually in a very safe time. It just feels unsafe. But actually, if you just say, what are you doing? Throwing pixels at me?
No, so as long as you have sort of, I think the mean thing is, I always joke is that I'm the only person who can fire me, which is good. So, but there are unfortunately people who are dependent on other people. Like you have a job,
and
whatever.
That's where it gets dangerous.
And that's where it gets dangerous. This is why I think the real sort of where it should actually end is like you can complain about people and you can have different opinions and you can have a debate, but like the consequence, I think we had a great achievement in the Western world that real consequences are actually taken or decided by judges and courts. And
then it has to be. That's the only place where
this is taken away.
It cannot be justice if it's mob justice. It just can't be justice. By the very nature of it being mob justice, it's not justice.
And we're losing that a bit.
We're losing that. We're losing that understanding. And we have a fetish for vigilante films where it's like somebody's doing something bad and there's a cop, but the cop can't go through the system because the justice that's needed is justice that's beyond the system, right? And we all have this trained in our mind where it's like, no. Actually, the system was developed for a fucking reason. And yes, it's imperfect. And yes, sometimes people escape it. And yes, blah, blah, blah. But we have to rely on that because otherwise the fervor of the mob will create madness, just like we saw in Salem, just like we saw all of a sudden everybody's a witch and all of a sudden there's fires across town. Like, we have to be mindful that the system is there to protect all of us. And yes, we may lose a couple times by using the system, but overall, like, it's the best thing we got.
Yeah, 100%.
So during this podcast, full of many guest appearances from our kiddies, we took a quick, short restroom break. And upon returning, Christian wanted to talk about his opinion on vaccines. So we roll right into the conversation. So apologies for the abrupt reintroduction, but I believe you'll be able to pick up with the thread of the conversation from where we started recording.
The short version, by the way, is for yourself as well. I think being vaccinated is good. However, the mRNA vaccine was not made for sort of viruses. Originally, if you remember, mRNA was the original idea was to make a cancer vaccine, which means if you already have cancer, you train your body to attack the cancer. So, which is a very smart idea. So, and like everything in medicine, it's always about the balance, or like to make a judgment call. What's the problem I want to solve, and what I'm willing to pay. So, if you're having cancer, you don't care about myocarditis if it's a risk, because you still want to cure the cancer. So the mRNA vaccine, or mRNA, the technology is really, really valuable. And what it does, it creates a very strong immune response. By the way, which this is what it's meant to do. Like, that's why it's a great technology. So, and sort of in the panic in COVID, we used it, which was also not even wrong because we didn't know what COVID is doing. So I was like, look, one-time mRNA, whatever. But like, it's not meant to be used all the time for a fairly non-deadly thing for younger people like COVID. Like, so practically my view is don't use mRNA all the time. Don't get boosted all the time because it has side effects. And this is all what people describe online. Again, depends what you were like sort of optimizing
so
for.
Basically what you're saying is that the vaccine is doing what it is intended to do. It's creating these spike proteins and these antibodies, or whatever mechanism it is, to actually fight off some portion of what COVID contained. But it comes with a cost.
Yes.
Is what you're saying.
And especially the cost seems to get higher and higher the more often you do it. So the boostering is the problem. So my view is, now that we really know what COVID does, now that we have antiviral medication if people get COVID, now we have the antibodies if people get COVID, now we have other vaccines, which are maybe not as effective, but by the way, the flu vaccine is also not 100% effective. So now that we have a full tool set of how to handle that, I think the mRNA boostering is too aggressive. It doesn't make sense anymore to sort of pay that price if you have other alternatives.
And there's a lot of data about the price that's being paid, and this goes into also potential, suppression of the speech and suppression of the narrative, like we were talking about, that is now becoming exposed, where even in the Twitter files, certain doctors who are sharing information, and this is part of the story that I think doesn't want to get told by the powers that be that are benefiting from additional cash generated from boosters and stuff.
By the way, I still like, what I'm thinking a lot is, and I have no answer, is like, the Twitter files seem to be a very concrete group of people colluding, like Biden team, Twitter, whatever. But like, often I think things happen, but it's not because 10 people met in a room and said, oh, let's do that. but more because one comes to the other. So there is no evil superpower. That's what I actually wanted, maybe to be more precise, what I wanted to say with the World Economic Forum when I said there are no conspiracies possible. Maybe there are some, but like it's often things, and this is, by the way, the sad truth. The sad truth is that our world is maybe so chaotic and things are so often happening kind of randomly that this is truly frightening people. And actually, it's frightening me a bit. Yeah. So that thinking that there are, 50 secret leaders orchestrating everything gives people a comfort that at least somebody is in charge. Yeah. And that's not the case. Yeah. So
there's no one driving this ship.
Yes,
Are you serious?
No, that's the point.
I was expecting at least 10 evil wizards.
And then you look at China, then you have a country where there are people in charge. There you have that. You have maybe, what is the standing committee, 12 people or whatever, like they are in charge. That's not what I want. Like I'd rather have this chaos, as uncomfortable as it is, than having a group of people like being fully in charge of everything.
Yeah. That's and I think right now we're in a period where, things are becoming more and more transparent and exposed, as we're seeing with the Twitter files, as we're seeing with, it's much harder to keep a secret now, not only for us, but for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. So,
everybody.
Which is on the side, it's healthy, but then it's not healthy. It's very, I think the true problem is, which we all appreciate too little, is that life is, and the world, and we as humans inside in our brain and everything is way more complex than we want to admit. And I think we crave wrongly for simplification.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And by the way, that is maybe when we talked about political correctness is, you said, look, and totally correctly, like there were things or are things where if somebody is harassing somebody or whatever, that's bad and we have to outlaw that as a society. But then there's other cases. And the truth is, we need to discuss all these nuances.
Right.
But we live in a world where nuances are completely lost. Everybody wants to be black or white, and you're almost afraid to discuss things. Yeah. And the truth is, again, if I look at many sort of whatever, from technology to whatever political stuff we're involved, everything is really fucking complicated. Yeah. So, and it's very, very, and we should appreciate or at least accept that how complicated it is, and accept that, for example, also two truths can be true at the same time. It is
paradox.
I would say it was the right thing to do, which some whatever right-wing people would say, why do you say that? Like, I deeply believe scientifically it was the right thing to do to develop these vaccines as quickly as they were developed, because we didn't know everything about COVID. Like, it could have been way worse than we thought. Yeah, so the people really wanted to protect the population. And everything was right. So
people have to remember, it was Trump that created Operation Warp Speed.
Yeah, and it's exactly. And it's also the right thing to do,
as fast as possible.
To now look at it and say, okay, do we still need it? Did we overreact? Yeah. Again, many things can be true at the same time.
Like, listen, I mean, I think a lot of people's criticism came with the mandates. Like, I think the idea that you should force somebody to take it, that's where a lot of people, and I completely agree.
I think that was indeed, I think I still wouldn't have a full opinion on it, because it was a very complicated question, because like, for vaccines, again, the question was how afraid have people been who had to take the decision ultimately of how bad this could get. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And by the way, if we would sit here now and COVID would have turned out to be way worse, yeah, we would maybe applaud the same people for a vaccine mandate. Yeah. So I think that was the most complicated decision, because it goes into the individual freedom. But also, like, again, it's also true at the same time that vaccinating your population just makes sense, yeah, if you get to a certain threshold. Yeah.
What about the libertarian in you that says,
this is what I'm saying,
don't you fucking force me?
No, this is what I'm saying. It's not easy, and I don't even have the full answer for myself. I was thinking, but like, I would say, although I'm libertarian, in that moment, I most likely would have taken the same decision to make a vaccine mandate. Yeah. And we should be able to discuss it. Yeah. Actually, again, but I think it has big parts to do with the media. I would rather have whatever a Fauci or anybody who was involved say that they had doubts, because they did have. I know so many of my friends in Germany who were in government back then. Like, they they were, meaning nobody was prepared for a pandemic.
Just say like, look, this was a really fucking tough choice. And we felt like if we didn't mandate this thing could spread wildly and kill a bunch of different people. So we did it. We didn't like that we did it. But, so you could actually paint a picture that's not evil people trying to depopulate the world.
Yeah,
but actually just tough decisions that turned out to be wrong decisions, but tough decisions.
What I can say, by the way, I don't say all, this is such a generalist statement, but like most of the top people, like I had the pleasure to know and know our former Chancellor Merkel really well. Most of the people I met.
Former Chancellor of who?
Oh, Germany, Merkel, yeah. Or Kagame, or Rwanda, whatever. Or in generally also business leaders, most of them do mean well. That is actually sad to see how everything they're doing is sort of twisted in as if there is an evil plot. They are all humans. They can make mistakes. Yeah. Again, they know how complicated the world is they're operating in.
Right.
And maybe we lost, or they should communicate that more, but maybe it would upset people more if they would really understand how complicated the world is. Yeah. But like, so I really want to protect a little bit, like what, if I read like, the World Economic Forum, stuff like that actually hurts me a bit, because all the people I know who running these think tanks, whatever, they have opinions on things. They maybe are on one side or the other side of the political spectrum, but they do mean well. I've never encountered, maybe because I never encountered those 50 people, but no joking. But like, this
you
is.
You would have, I mean, look, the thing is it feels like you would have been approached.
Yeah, I always think that. I did something wrong. No,
if such a thing existed, you would probably know.
Yeah, no, but honestly, it's really important for everyone. Most leaders I ever met in my life, and I met a lot, especially in politics, they do mean well.
Yeah.
Yeah. We might disagree with them on what well means or on their, but again, I think what we need back is what I would wish for, I think it's not coming, like, is more nuance, more accepting.
Yeah. So in the lineage teachings of, Hebrew mysticism, there's the Torah and the Testaments and the Zohar, which are like the sacred texts. And then there's the Talmud, which is explaining all of the nuances. And Ari Shafir has a great comedy special called Jew. And he talks about one of the nuances they explore in the Talmud, which is religious doctrine, which is going into the nuance. And of course, there's a mandate that Jews shouldn't have pork products. So no ham. And then they have a whole section in the Talmud that talks about how much, if some ham gets in your soup accidentally, how much ham can you actually just eat and it's all cool? And how much ham is in there that you have to throw the whole soup away, right? Nuance. It's actually doesn't really matter about the ham, but what it's teaching is fucking nuance. And they make a decision. They say 1/60th, as long as it's no more than 1/60th ham, you're good. Eat it. No problem. God's cool with it. Everything's good. So they make a line, because you have to make a line somewhere, right? Like you can't have, there was the smell of bacon cooking from the next neighbor and a particle of ham got in my food. Let's throw it all away. Like it gets absurd. So you have to understand the nuance of everything. And I think that's a part of the way that we need to apply thinking, that it's not black and white. There's nuance to everything. And sometimes you just have to put a line somewhere and say like, all right, this is too much ham.
And I would say philosophically or like poetically speaking, like that nuances make life awesome. Like it would be really suck if life would be just black and white. And like, I think everything we're enjoying, is coming from that complexity of everything. Yeah.
One of the things, so just to wrap up the World Economic Forum, one of the things that I think freaked people out was this ad they put out that said, basically, by 2030, you will own nothing and you will be happy. So they put that out on a commercial. You will own nothing and you will be happy. World Economic Forum, right? And like what was that plan? Because what it seemed like is like, yo, somebody's got a plan and they haven't told us this shit and they leaked some of it.
No, I mean, then they wouldn't put it on an ad. Like
right.
No, I think I vaguely remember that it was they did a big study on how ownership preferences evolve. And the truth is, for example, by the way, it's nothing conspiracy that younger people don't want to own their car anymore because they
want to lease.
They want to. No, they have an Uber. Yeah, I don't own a car, by the way. Like, why should I? Like, yeah, there's always an Uber and there's always a driver and there's always something. Like, why should I own a car? Yeah. So, and I think it was a completely economic observation that a younger generation has different preferences in terms of owning a house, owning a car, owning some of the. By the way, which completely neutrally, like this will change the world a lot because, like in Germany, 20%. I just have that number in my head. 20% of the German industry or the German GDP are related to cars. So if suddenly in 20 years cars are less important and you have less cars because people are sharing cars, sharing economies, I think was the headline of their study, then this is an important thing to look at. And I think this was all they wanted to say. They wanted to say there is a change in consumer behavior. Yeah, and then people, by the way, and why?
Because what people are thinking is, they're going to take away everything you own and you're going to have nothing left. And I was trying to think, how the fuck does that work?
I had one photo shooting, just like how people, and I think they want to do where I did something like that. Like, and why I did it? Because the photographer said I shall do it. It might look cool.
So you just made a diamond with your hands.
And it looked cool. Like it looked artistically cool. And somebody then said, "Oh my God, this is the secret symbol of the World Economic Forum." That like whatever. I was like, "What the bullshit?" Like it's like and the same like no.
I mean, my logo that says AM, it's an A, which is, and then in the middle it has an M. And they're like, that's a Freemason symbol, bro.
Yeah.
I know exactly. No, it's not. It's my initials.
Exactly.
You know how I got it?
Yeah.
And I got that logo. I went on 99 Designs and I crowdsourced this logo.
Sometimes the life is actually easy. Like
from homie in Indonesia, who's a badass designer, developed this and I paid him the premium gold price and fucking got this logo.
No, it's so funny. I think people, when the world is really complex, they want to simplify. And what the answer is really simple. You went on 99 Designers or what it's called. Like they want to make a huge complexity out of it. It's completely, By the way, there is these medieval, what is it called? I think it's called Occam's Razor.
Occam's Razor, yeah.
Where is it the one where you say like always the simplest explanation, which by the way is a good thing for life.
Yeah,
by the
way, simplest explanation is typically the true explanation.
Yeah, so that people should apply more.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And most of the time it's right. And then occasionally.
And then it should be,
occasionally there's the aberrations to that. But this idea that what the World Economic Forum was saying is that we're moving into a shared economy where people are actually going to be sharing homes as we already do with Airbnb.
Exactly.
Cars, and they just phrased it in a way where they shouldn't have said nothing. Because obviously you'll own something. You're going to own my underwear. You know, it's not like our underwear. You know, it's like, no, it's fucking mine. And these are my shoes. You know, like this is my stuff.
I think it was just misguided communication. Whatever they thought, but again, I think it's a hard job when the whole world is trying to find actively misinterpret whatever you're saying.
So one of the things that I noticed about the World Economic Forum is recently there was, I don't know if it was officially or unofficially, there was some psychedelic medicine that was actually brought out to one of the events. And I saw a few different articles about this. And there was I think Bufo, 5-MeO-DMT, and some other things that were connected, at least. And again, you know, this is not, I don't have for sure proof about this, but it was this interesting moment. And what I saw happen is it spread around the community because I'm deeply in the psychedelic community. And the question was, because there's this idea that World Economic Forum is bad and up to bad things. And I think we've exposed a lot of that thinking here, hopefully. And I just want to say, like, what I feel from you is I believe you. And also I have to recognize that I have a bias. I want to believe you. I want to believe that actually. So I understand that there is some bias, but I feel like I believe you and I want to believe you. So for anybody who wants to call me out, there may be some bias because I do want to believe that what you're saying is true. Like Hanlon's razor also, like, do not ascribe malice to that which could be described by ignorance, you know. Okay, like I'm with that 100%. So anyways, this merger, this combination between psychedelics and the World Economic Forum, which is actually embodied by you yourself. You are the founder and chairman of a couple different psychedelic companies and a member of the WEF. But anyways, psychedelics were being woven into the forum. And the question was, either they're using these tools for their nefarious plan, or this is actually like they're just looking out at the world like everybody else going, wow, these things can really help our mind. And I have trouble going to sleep at night.
The answer is, to my knowledge, is neither nor. Because like what people confuse is that there is a World Economic Forum event, what they call Davos. It's happening in Davos. And then they have multiple so-called regional events throughout the year. And it's happening very, by the way, banal, in the Davos Convention Center. Yeah. And in order to enter the Davos Convention Center, you need to be a member of the World Economic Forum. So then, because we're in this politically correct time, and this makes me now look very old, because like when I started going to Davos, they were still able to completely cut off the whole village because nobody cared, but like it was a different time. It was like when I went to Davos the first time 14 years ago. So it was practically a synonym. Everybody who was in Davos was automatically also a member of the World Economic Forum, because you literally couldn't enter the village for a week. So every year that was sort of weakened, because we went into this time where we have to be very transparent and where you can't cut off a whole village for the elitists of the World Economic Forum. So in the meantime, every single person can go to Davos, because it's a village.
Yep.
Yeah. So you can go in 3 weeks, I think it is again, or 2.5 weeks, where we like, okay, this is like most likely published after, but like in January, people can go to Davos and say, I'm in Davos. And because still in the mind of the people, Davos and the World Economic Forum is a synonym, but they might be in Davos physically, but they might not be at the World Economic Forum. So what
it's
happening?
Like South by Southwest in Austin.
Exactly.
There's the official event, and then there's a million events that are happening.
And to my knowledge, and I'm really following that part closely, is that on the official World Economic Forum agenda, there was not a psychedelic theme. There was longevity themes, and they going into mental health, whatever, but like gradually. But there were side events who had nothing to do with the World Economic Forum, side events happening. So you also need to think now, why do some people in the psychedelic community who are so suspicious of the World Economic Forum still seek out the affiliation, although they're not even affiliated, which is another discussion. So which also shows you a lot of human psychology. But these were just events happening coincidentally, so to say, at the same time as the World Economic Forum in the same city, Davos. But it was not the same. So this is why the answer is there is no conspiracy, nothing, or no even overlap, because
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the psychedelic movement and the psychedelic renaissance that's happening as well. And I think one of the big concerns that a lot of the people who are kind of psychedelic traditionalists, let's say, is that we shouldn't medicalize and pharmaceuticalize these sacred medicines, considering, of course, there's the plants themselves, but then there's the derivatives of the plants, and they're all considered, I think, by the psychedelic traditionalists as the sacred medicines, and the sacred should not be commodified, is the traditionalist viewpoint. And I fully respect that viewpoint, because look, these medicines are sacred. I've experienced the most sacred things you could possibly ever imagine through the guidance and support and help of these different compounds. So I fully understand that argument, but I also understand the complexity of the world we're in, and actually that by using the pharmaceutical machine, at least from my view, like allowing the psychedelics to enter through the pharmaceutical machine, which was led, of course, by MAPS pushing the MDMA-assisted psychotherapy through as one of the real leaders, and then quickly thereafter, psilocybin from, those trials that are coming. It's actually helpful to get this out into the world. It's actually like a distribution mechanism with some controls in place that actually is helpful ultimately. And it doesn't preclude you going down to Oaxaca and doing mushrooms with, a maestra down there, or going to Peru and studying with, my teacher, Maestro Orlando Chuendama, the Quechua tradition, where he's brewing his own. It doesn't preclude you from doing that. And I think that's also a nuance where people, they're either very like traditionalists or like orthodox fundamentalist, or not, or they just see everything as a drug without the sacredness attached. It's just a drug. It's just a compound. It's just everything, just like Valium. Like no, it's not. It's different. But again, it's like the complexity. I don't think people are really grasping.
But it was perfectly said. Like, this is normally what I say about when the question comes up, how do you marry like sort of just the sacred nature of the drugs, or what I believe in. Because interestingly, funnily, people also, that it's never of the both things can be true at the same time. Yeah, I believe in capitalism. I believe in drug development, biotech drug development, that this is the right way to bring new medicine to people. But at the same time, as an individual, it's not a scientific answer. And I can explain you scientifically what psychedelics do, but as an individual answer, as a personal answer, I very, very much believe in the religious part of it. And I do believe that psychedelics are a pathway or a connection to the divine, and whatever you want to call it, God or yourself or your soul or whatever. Sure. I think the problem is always when you start talking about religion, it's
nomenclature becomes an issue.
Because then we are so wired to have an immediate, when I say God, then a Hindu might have an immediate, completely different picture. But interestingly, I think when people have done psychedelics, they know what you want to say.
Yeah.
But I believe in both.
It's the God
and,
you know.
But it's exactly what you said. There is no competition. I think some people, and again, these are just so little, by the way, because most spiritual people I meet who really, because interestingly, you should be chilled out if you're very spiritual and should accept that humans are different and that there are different ways, whatever. So, but unfortunately, I would say that psychedelics seem to produce the same amount of zealots. I think that's the
zealots,
yeah. And sort of extremists like any other religion as well. That seems to be almost wired in that some people turn to that, but it's a small number. Yeah, because I would say these two sort of practices, they at least the minimum, they can perfectly coexist next to each other. I think even better, I think they very much supporting each other. For example, by our medical work in an FDA framework, approving those medicines, we actually give so much credibility to sort of the more sort of indigenous way to do it. And I do believe that I had this wonderful experience where a girl was emailing me on Instagram who I practically don't know. I think we did shake hands at an event I was speaking, and I was talking about psychedelics, and she had never done it. And she then felt the calling after, and she did it. Actually, she went to Costa Rica, did it at Rhythmia, I think it's called. And wrote me this super beautiful email or message on Instagram, how much it changed her life. Yeah. But this, she would maybe have been a person if we wouldn't have created the scientific sort of studies. She would maybe have been too anxious to go to the jungle and do it with a shaman.
Yeah, and look, I'm also excited about this reality. Somebody goes in to help their anxiety. And okay, I'm here for my anxiety. I'm here for my psilocybin treatment for anxiety. They go in to treat their anxiety, and their anxiety is getting treated, but it's getting treated because it's opening their heart to the possibility of their eternal, unborn, and undying soul, and its absolute inextricability with the one love, truth, beauty, intelligence of all there is, God. And they find that, and they're like, oh, wow, I'm a little bit less stressed out now.
Yeah, and by the way, and then also there are people who don't have a spiritual experience, but still are helped, and it's also okay.
That's also good too.
Exactly, and by the way, what we always, and we say, because you and I have the same view, and a lot of sort of more psychonauts, I think we all underestimate that we are the 1%. By the way, two things: we are the 1% financially, because whoever tells me at the moment, in this moment of time, that he or she, or that they are going to Costa Rica, they already have the money to buy the flight. And it's as we shouldn't treat that normal. There are many people who couldn't say, oh, I'm flying and then I pay the shaman and then I take 3 weeks off. There is a lot of luxury and entitlement when people say oh, this is the way it should be. I was hey, there are 300 million people, who first of all, many of them don't have the luxury to take 3 weeks off and go to the jungle. They don't have the money to pay it for themselves. They maybe don't have the courage. But maybe they don't want that at all. If I look at my parents, they really, really, and I convinced them at some point to do it because I'm their son, but they really profit from it. But they don't want to go to a shaman. They would be actually way more happier. And luckily at the end, they trusted me. But what they want is to go to their doctor they're seeing since 50 years, and take it with them. It's we should accept that different people have different views, but that the medicine, and that's the beauty of it, does help many of them.
Right.
Yeah, and it's not one way to do it.
Yeah.
And industry, I'm bothered by that often the various, or at least some people coming from the religious side sort of try to enforce a certain way. I'm not trying to enforce a certain way. I'm trying to develop one way, which is the medical way in the medical system, which I believe is the fastest way to get it to the people who really need it, which, by the way, always should be the guiding principle. The guiding principle should be not people like you and me who do profit a lot, but we are not rock bottom depressive. Yeah. So the guiding principle should be, how can we make sure that these super valuable medicines come to the hundreds of millions of people who have no alternative, who tried everything, who have a miserable life, and who want it and need it within the medical system. Yeah. And then by doing that, that's what we are doing with Atai and Compass. And by doing that, I think all the other sort of options around, which are equally valuable, I don't even want to charge what is more valuable, like they are profiting. Because again, people might say, you know what, I read about the science Compass is paying for in Atai, but I have the feeling I should do it in a traditional. Great. Yeah. And we gave you the confidence to do it. Great. Go ahead.
There's two things I want to touch on. One that comes up is one of the criticisms that I've heard of Compass from some of the more psychedelic traditionalists, and also from people who just have a sense of things and are trying to figure it out, is the patent strategy. It's like, oh my God, Compass is out. They're patenting all of these compounds, and that's going to prevent anybody from ever being able to use them, right? So what people are worried about is that the patents are going to lock them up, and then in this case,
that's what they meant to do.
That's what they meant to do. So they're going to get locked up, and no one's going to ever be able to use them. But the thing is that
no,
they're
like
already.
That is sorry, because this is really one of my favorite topics. First of all, every day somebody complains about the patents of Compass and Atai. It's a good day because it confirms that we did something right, because that's what patents should do. And by the way, you don't complain in any other biotech field. Having patents is the most normal and basic thing of biotech development, because Compass at the very end, when hopefully in a year, 1.5 from now, Compass will have an approved psilocybin, which will make the world a better place. So big shout out to George and Katya, who get way too much criticism for nothing, because like they did something amazing as sort of the pioneers in that field. Like they're gonna have invested hundreds of millions. I think it's gonna be north of $500 million, which was needed to advance a medical drug to approval. Yeah, and the only way, by the way, I'm the biggest investor. Yeah, the only way, as much as I want to give money to everything I want to, like I have to think about making money back. That's my job. Yeah, and the only way to raise that amount of money, and the same is true for Atai, is to make sure that once we succeed, we're gonna make that money back and more, because that's the capitalistic way. Yeah, and that's what patents do, is that they will prevent that other people in the medical system can use psilocybin because we paid for it. However, it does not prevent any shaman growing their own mushrooms. That's a completely different world.
That's, I think, what people are afraid of. They're afraid of some patent police,
but
task force that
wrong.
Come into George and Maria's fucking hut.
Or I always jokingly say, I'm not going to come to Burning Man and knocking on every caravan and say, pay me my royalties for it's a complete misunderstanding. Literally, it's funny, but I do think people believe it. So, and that makes them scared, and then even who understand it. Like, obviously, like it's two different worlds. Like, but what it means is that any medical psilocybin used by doctors to treat patients paid by the healthcare insurance will be Compass psilocybin, and that is good.
It seems like people are getting an initial reaction, and this is just my sentiment as well, and probably people are going to be mad at me because they're still in this initial reaction, but these compounds are already illegal, first of all, which is a way bigger problem than a patent infraction or something like that, and so when these get legalized, actually, so I've seen this with ketamine. So I forget which pharma company, but they repatented S-ketamine and actually
repatented. It was a subversion, but
J&J. So J&J patented S-ketamine, And then that actually opened the field for ketamine to be prescribed off-label. Now I have wonderful prescriptions from this company I'm involved with called WonderMed. They send me these lozenges. I have unbelievable journeys here on my own. Thank you to J&J for pushing S-ketamine forward, which is a derivative that they patented of ketamine, which then opened the whole field of unpatentable ketamine because it's already been around forever. And now I get to do it with my fucking Mindfold on in my bedroom, and I wasn't able to do that before. So like it's already worked in our favor one time in a hugely beneficial way.
Yes, I can't agree more.
And that's, I think people are, I understand, but I also understand the fear. I also understand, especially in the climate that we've had where it feels like pharma has an agenda that's ruthless and just about profiteering and at all cost and this idea. But I think really what it comes down to is, yes, there may be some of that, but there's nuance in everything, and that's what people are not potentially adequately seeing is just the nuance of the whole picture and also following the threads all the way through about what will actually happen.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of misunderstanding. There is this generally idea that pharma is bad, which is, by the way, also wrong. Like pharma is not bad. Pharma is not a conspiracy. Like, is pharma profit-driven? Yes, like every company should be profit-driven, but actually being profit-driven actually tells them or supports new drugs being developed all the time. If pharma wouldn't be profit-driven, a lot of the science wouldn't happen because like profit or hopefully the prospect of profit is what is driving the economy and what is driving companies. If you would take the profit out, we tried that in communistic systems. And it doesn't work. Go to people in Venezuela, because you should go to people who are really in systems who try that stuff, or go to people who were in former Russia or in former Korea, whatever. Ask them if they like it. Yeah. So, and when people here don't like the capitalistic system, why don't they move to Venezuela or to Cuba or to North Korea?
I think the problem that Brett Weinstein elucidates is the problem of capture. It's the fact that actually the money, and if everybody was actually good actors and everybody was acting within the bounds of actually the law, because these big pharma companies, there's been $2 billion fines and $1 billion fines for different frauds and different ways that they've manipulated data. So it's actually when they cross the line and do kind of a morally, either criminal, which they've been punished for. I mean, pretty much nobody has a clean record in pharma as far as like not getting, Compass and Atai, and may that always be the case. But very few big players in pharma have a clean record of not being fined and punished for criminal fraud or some kind of activity like that. And there's, certainly seems to be those borderline moral things where money was chosen over the greater good. But I think if you just focus on that, you're missing the nuance of the whole thing, which is like, all right, these are the negative aspects of this system, but it's still the best system. We just have to help change these negative aspects.
Maybe that it's the same like we say about democracy. It's not perfect, but it's sort of is the best one we so far as society came up with. And the same is, I think, capitalism. Capitalism is not perfect. Yeah. And by the way, we had that before this discussion with FTX, you can have bad actors in any industry. Yeah. Right. But like what I want to say is, what my feeling is in maybe any industry, but also and especially in biotech and pharma, this is actually an industry where really people want to help other people. It's really like this whole idea, because I get the question all the time, and luckily people don't see us as pharma, they see us as biotech. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But like people who go into pharma and biotech overall want to help people, which is, by the way, the great thing of that industry. It's maybe the most satisfying industry to be in, because always when you're successful, you do help people on sometimes small stuff.
Usually when you're successful, you help people. Some cases where you've created something that doesn't.
But drug development wants to heal people and solve people. Yeah. Right. And by the way, then moving in the patents, like the great thing is patents are not forever. This is why they have a lifetime, and then some when they're over, and then some when competition comes, which is for enforcing biotech and pharma companies to be innovative and develop better solutions, whatever. And yes, are there people who game the system? Yes, like in any industry. Yeah. And this should be bad. This should be sort of seen as bad as from society, but like the overall people, especially and also in pharma and biotech, are good people who want to make sort of a change or want to make things better for humans. I've never encountered, by the way, I'm in this industry now, investing in biotech since 25 years. Again, I started very early. So, but like, I never encountered that conspiracy that somebody is withholding stuff, whatever. Yeah. Again, by the way, people are, unfortunately, because one of the usual things when I go to a class reunion is like, why is there no solution for cancer yet? Like, is there a conspiracy that pharma companies are holding back? No, it's really, really complex. Like, and there have been billions and billions of dollars literally sunk, and because cancer, I have another theory why cancer we have, but like it's complicated. That's the answer. Like, but people are like, oh no, they must have a solution, and they just don't give it to us because they want to drip feed us with chemotherapy. No, it's sad that we still have chemotherapy still, it's a very old thing, like it's still one of the pillars, shows how complicated cancer is, and how complicated drug development is, but it's not because the people are evil.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's been it's kind of a general theme, is there's the good and the bad mixed in, and that's all there. And there's also bad actors in every industry, in every organization. And you know, if there have been bad actors over the past 2 years and collusion, which, you know, as we discussed with the Twitter thing, this like small areas of collusion, hopefully those get exposed, and then the bad actors are actually pay the consequences for their actions, you know, and that's, I think, what is the process that's happening when, you know, when I talk to people who are on the health freedom side, their degree of confidence that actually, I just did a podcast with Ed Dowd, and he has a degree of confidence that now attorney generals of the states are looking in to see, like, if there was any fraud and collusion, and if there was suppression of important data, if there was bad actions, that's being pressed and will actually come out in the legal system. And that's right, Cyrano. And that will actually move forward. And so actually, potentially, the system is clumsily, and we face a great challenge, it's clumsily working as it has to expose what needs to be exposed. But actually, it's okay. Like the process is underway, and we're figuring things out.
And this is now, it's not now specific to pharma, but like a general rule which I have in life, and I actually, especially now in downturns, you have portfolio companies not working, whatever, and you easily get angry on other people or you get disappointed or whatever. My rule in life was like giving people the benefit of the doubt that their intentions are good. You're gonna have people who trick you once in a while, and I think many people then let these few moments, which are actually just a few, there is just one FTX or this very big, there's just, and there are the guys who did the opioids, yes, there are these bad examples, like, but you forget the way higher number of good people, or what I always remind myself when I'm getting whatever, very disappointed or even like defrauded by one person, then you have this instinct to become hard, to close yourself, whatever. But then I remind myself how often sort of my generally trusting nature, or giving people benefit of the doubt and being very optimistic on ideas, on people, how much that actually has profited me. And if I would now use one thing where I get disappointed to allow that to change me, that would be not just sad, that would, I think, over time really cost me a lot.
Well, it's like if your partner cheats on you, then
and you would never have a partner again.
And all of a sudden you're like, women are unfaithful, women are unloyal. You know, it's like, no, your partner just cheated on you.
There was this individual person.
Men are dogs. Or, no, your boyfriend just slept with somebody.
But what you do by sort of saying that, you actually don't allow you to be happy in the future, because you will ruin every relationship going forward.
Sure. Our cats always want to steal the limelight. For those of you watching on video, we have a big appearance by our large leopard-like cat named Cyrano. So speaking of cats, now that he entered the scene, I want to ask you about, your own your own experience with any traditional teachers or ceremonies, have you been able to go through that portal to experience these psychedelic medicines in the traditional setting with ayahuasqueros or maestros or curanderos or huachumeros or anybody on the more traditional side?
So this is now the answer is not complicated, it's just timeline wise, because I know and people know I think it's recorded, and you're gonna see that when then I'm gonna will have had, because like I'm gonna have it from now on, but this is before the podcast comes out in 3 weeks, which is
beautiful.
It's actually a very interesting story because I would say, let's start there. I'm very spiritual even before psychedelics. So I actually, since I'm brought up Catholic, but I always had sort of I was always drawn to like in general like mysticism, from Rumi to Kabbalah to in generally, I believe more. First of all, I don't believe in organized religion, so I believe in that there is a higher being, which I think is very hard for us to put in words at all. Yeah. So, and then I think people tried it because they wanted to help their fellow people. So I think always, if you look at, in generally, it's a little bit generalized, but like I was always very interested in sort of the history of religions. So if you go through religions, they normally are good at the beginning because there are people who have a spiritual experience and who want to give on that spiritual experience to their fellow humans. And then either they stay a cult or we don't even know anymore about them because they vanished. But the problem is we know the ones who transformed from being spiritual to being an organization. And an organization, by definition, can't really be spiritual. And there are great texts, if you go in the early days of Christianity, when they had their first, what is the English term, when they were meeting up, the first sort of councils. And many of these texts are practically acknowledging that people were doing psychedelics because they were talking. Some of the Gnostic texts. They were talking about, they didn't name, but they were talking about practices which allow you to communicate with God. But then the more pragmatic parts of the just starting church were saying, but this is not how you can run an organization. If your disciples come in the morning and say, you know what, last night I spoke to God and he told me that. And then the other one is, I was told this. This is how you can't run an organization. So they started actually to saying, no, not everybody should do that. Like just the priests, just the cardinals, whatever. And at the end, oh no, the only guy who speaks to God is the Pope, or the top guy in any church. Like sort of that is unfortunately a transformation most religions we know now, because that's the successful ones in terms of organization, they went through that. And this is why I'm not an organized religion guy, but I think you find beauty in all of them, because in the core, they all tell you, coming back what we said about political correctness, they all tell you just be a good human being, just be nice to, this is the core teaching of Jesus, is be nice to yourself and be nice to other people and treat other people like you want to be treated.
Yeah, and the sad part is that
solves a lot.
That was lost for so many years. I mean, we already referenced the burning of estimated 9 million witches in Europe.
Exactly,
the tortures of the Inquisition.
It's like
the antithesis. It's almost like the church was acting in that way as the Antichrist.
Yeah.
Which is I know a very inflammatory thing to say, but if Christ stood for forgiveness and the recognition of the Christ within all people, then the killing and the torturing is anti-Christ consciousness. So the church was actually acting in the opposite way of what its original intentions were.
Yeah.
Which is sad.
Because it became an organization.
Yeah.
So, but that's my general sort of view on, even before psychedelics, I was very into the mystical sides of many religions, try to find the common denominator again, which is, I think, just be a good human being. Yeah. And then psychedelics sort of, this is why when I took psychedelics, I was very open to, again, on the one side, looking at them scientifically, and on the other side, saying, okay, wow, this is a tool to get closer to yourself, to your soul, and to God. So,
So, do you mind sharing which sacrament you're going to be experiencing?
I lost that. So, but interestingly, so far, the one which is missing is ayahuasca, and also I'm again, this story will have happened when it comes out, and then I can report back. But like so I have a friend who's a very accomplished ayahuasca shaman. So always when I had people who I felt really needed it for many reasons, I was referring them to him. And also, like, I believe very much, I don't want to say I'm like anti-party use, but I am actually, because like I believe so much in these substances, and especially in the religious spiritual component, that if you look at the history of psychedelics, and the best book to read is Brian Murescu's Immortality Key, they were actually, coming also back at Zola and Tebobon to the patent discussion, they were always highly regulated. So if you look at the
by the mystery schools,
exactly, so
they wouldn't even tell people what was in them.
They wouldn't even tell it. Sometimes it was forbidden by death to tell it to other people. Right. You were not allowed to do it on your own. You had to do it with your therapist.
And that's what happened when Alcibiades stole the kykeon from the mystery school, and then he was exiled from all of Greece because he was throwing his own parties with the sacrament.
Yes, so it was never meant to be a party drug. It was this is why Burning Man are very critical, and no one like people like at least because like I think the spiritual part is really, really important. So,
but I will say, just to throw that out, you can have spiritual experiences in a party setting, and I think it's important to have the nuance. There's nuance in that as well.
I agree. So like, what I want to say is like, one part of that is that I believe you shouldn't be a thrill seeker. Yeah, so you shouldn't do it for the party. Yeah, it doesn't mean it should be really a sacrament. It should be like
with reverence.
Yeah,
full reverence.
And you should do it, which I very much believe in, because actually my first psychedelic experience was really built up over 2 years. I was very stern. We talked about it. I have never done any other drug, including alcohol. I've never tried it before. Yeah, because I didn't want it in my life. I think drugs, the bad ones, are a product of evil, if you want to use the term of the devil, because they feed on all your insecurities and all your weaknesses. And they offer you an easy way out. Right. But the truth is they make it really worse. So that was my view on any drug. I didn't know of psychedelics. So it was really like, it took me 2 years and many, what you could call a coincidence. Yeah. But meeting scientists randomly, but at a time when nobody was talking about psychedelics. Yeah. And they talked to me about psychedelics, having friends who brought it up. So that ultimately I did psilocybin mushrooms in 2014. Yeah. So, but there was a way, and there was again, if you want to see it, like there was a universe pushing me to that. So I believe there should be either a calling or a push. Yeah. Yep. So, and I didn't have that for ayahuasca, because I always thought, okay, I think I got all my answers I have to the divine in my mushroom experiences. Long story short, so I referred though, because I see, and also again in our scientific work, sort of ayahuasca is stronger. So there are people who profit from it extremely. So I was referring people who I felt they need more than a psilocybin trip. I was referring to my friend, and all of them came back problem solved, transformed. So that in October, I was thinking for myself, maybe I should just try it for the sake, it's like, from all people, I should be the one who said, just try it. Like, of course. So, and I have so many friends, and it's weird recommending people and not having done yourself. So I made an appointment with my friend, who's very, very sort of in demand. But then I thought about it 2 weeks later, and I was like, I will never forget that, because I was sitting in LA with friends, and I thought the whole day, I was like, January is getting so full, and this is such a commitment. And again, if I want to do it properly, like with the right fasting and everything. So it is a commitment, in a January, which is already filling up. So I was actually writing the email, and I still have the email in my draft folder, and sending my friend and saying, look, you have so many people who really need it, and you booked out, like, do it with somebody who needs it. I'm going to cancel. I don't need it. And this was the day, and I could really show, like, it was one of the, you can call it a coincidence, where this girl who I, again, socially met in passing at an event I was speaking, emailed me, and not just said what I said before, that she dared, because of what she heard from me, explore that side, but that she had a message from Mother Ayahuasca that I should do ayahuasca myself and not shy away from it, because I'm gonna get answers on questions I don't even know I have. So I'm very curious. So what that's gonna be. So I sent a screenshot to my shaman friend, and he was like, well, if you don't call that a calling, then it can't be more.
It's pretty on the nose.
It can't be more direct.
I'll tell you a story that's interesting too with ayahuasca. So it was around 2014, and I was running my company Onnit, and it was off to a great start, and but I needed some people underneath me to fill out the organization, and I get an email from a guy named Jason Havey, who got a message in an ayahuasca ceremony at a place called Blue Morpho down in Peru, in an ayahuasca ceremony, that he had to come work for me at Onnit. And ayahuasca was very clear. And he actually had his dream job. He was the manager of a hotel in his hometown in Wisconsin. And it was like, that's always what he wanted to do. And he did it. And he made it. And he was like, look, I got to come work for you. I'll be your assistant. I don't care. Like, whatever it is, like, I know I'm supposed to come work for you. So I was like, well, you're way too qualified to be my fucking assistant. So, and ultimately I hired him, and I had like VP of operations of this thing. He worked his way up, and then I handed him the CEO title right at the beginning of 2020. And then he carried on it all the way through the pandemic and all the way through the final sale. And he's been one of my closest friends and one of the great heroes of this company. But it was ayahuasca that specifically told him that come work for me, and he just answered the call. And that's wild. Like, that's fucking wild.
No, and by the way, I think more people have these experiences and don't dare to talk about it. And this morning I had the discussion with Florian, my colleague, who's the CEO of Atai. So we are 4 co-founders. And he was like, oh, is it really good that you talk about your spiritual stuff? And I was like, why not? Like, why are we making sort of that boxes? And like, oh, if you're a scientist or if you're in science, you cannot talk about A, B, C, and like, or if you're right wing, you cannot be like the same time for something like the vaccines. Like, we're making all these rules which don't make any sense, because always come back, humans are complex, life is complex. Yeah, we should exchange views. We don't always need to agree on things, but like, we should not shy away to say that's my opinion and that's my opinion. And weirdly, I can't have the same. I can't have the same at the same time.
Yeah, indeed. One of the things that I also wanted to talk to you about is that relates to this. I mean, when they call ayahuasca, of course, the vine of souls or the vine of death, because oftentimes you actually pass through your own portal of death, the death of who you think you are, to reveal who you really are, which includes who you think you are and transcends it to something else. So it's this kind of death rebirth process that's very common in the psychedelic space. And so it's been curious to me, because I've been through that process so many times, that I understand death, and I have personally, and I don't expect anybody to believe me, but I personally deeply understand what I believe to be the place that I'm going when I transition from this body, because I felt like I've been there many times. So
Same here.
The idea about longevity and this idea to try to live forever is a curious one for me, because I see someone like Ray Kurzweil, and I'm like, Ray, if you just did a little bit more psychedelics, you could maybe relax a little bit about trying to live forever, because guess what? You do, and it's all good. And like, but at the same time, I understand, I also want Aubrey not to live the longest, but if I could extend the quality of my life, where like I'm sharp and I can still, at 80 get around and like hit sex and a jump shot, and drive 250 on the golf course or whatever. Like, if I could still do that, like, yeah, I'm into it. But I'm not, it's not about death. It's just about life is awesome.
Exactly.
And I want the most of it.
I think people misunderstand and maybe look at me as maybe sometimes, because again, we're living in a world where we try to simplify things, and then I'm posting, oh, I want to defeat death or I want to live forever. Yeah. So, which is not the case, because first of all, let's start there. Living forever doesn't work, because forever is a very long time. Statistically, no, the term forever, doesn't work. So even I tweeted it though, so I'm conscious about it, because somewhere this universe will collapse, and a new one will start, So forever is never forever. But exactly what you say, like, I think it's almost like a game, by the way. I think it's like sort of we solved that mystery of aging, as we solved other mysteries, we're gonna live, I believe that, much longer. I actually believe that it is part of the human, not just psychology, but our nature, because I believe in the spiritual side, and in the soul, whatever. So somewhen our soul wants to die, because very deep down, I think we know that there is something coming and we want to go there. But why not live here 500 years and then do it? So, and I deeply believe actually that in my lifetime, we will push life expectancy that long.
To 500.
Well, it will not that we wake up one day and you're going to read in the news, Christian made it and we're living to 500. But it's going to be like Ray is perfectly explaining it. It's going to be a continuous prolongation. And there will be this one magic year. And I believe that's going to happen in the next 15 to 20 years, where we win more than 1 year of life expectancy in 1 year. And then technically we could go on forever because we winning more than we're losing.
Interesting.
So it's not going to be a chump.
So in 1 year, you do enough practices and you have enough protocols that actually you extend your life, let's call it 1 year and 1 month.
Yeah, whatever. Exactly. So we're pushing it, but it can well be that you and I keep pushing it, into the some hundreds. And I deeply believe that in my lifetime, we will be able to push life expectancy that much that people want to die. And I think that, talking about libertarian stuff, is the ultimate freedom. That you live your life to the fullest as long as you want it to. And by the way, maybe there are people who want to end it at 80. Maybe there are people who want to go until 500. I do think, by the way, psychedelics will play an integral role, because if you have the one thing is to have a functioning body and mind, but there is a difference. The mind, but your soul needs to want that novelty, and that's what psychedelics do. They make you really, really passionate for life, and they give you back what children have. I believe the awe, how amazing that all is. With all the problems and all the troubles. So, and I want to see where this is all going. But maybe there's a point when I'm 500 and I'm like, okay, now I had it. Now I don't know, read all the vampire novels. Anne Rice, she was writing 12 books, about which I love, about that whole idea, when is immortality enough? And it's gonna be enough somewhere, and then we're gonna see what's coming after. But what I don't like is that there is a limit at 80 or 85 or maybe 90 at the moment, and I'm very sure that when I'm 80 or 90, let's see that, I'm very sure at the moment that I still want to go on. If I don't, great. Let's end that. We should have a way more liberal, way more libertarian view on life and death. I would let anybody, there is all the complexity, and then if people do it too quickly and hastily because they're heartbroken and say, oh, I want to end it now, so we need a little bit of a buffer between emotions, but in generally, we should be the master of our
permanent solutions to temporary problems are a bad idea.
So again, in the big picture, I believe we hopefully.
What if there was a psychedelic protocol to get the right for euthanasia at that point, right? If you wanted to end it, it was no problem. But part of your process is to do 200 milligrams of MDMA and make sure.
It's interesting that you say, by the way, that you say MDMA, because MDMA makes you love yourself more if you do it right.
Right.
Because interestingly, we saw in some studies with cancer patient at the very end, what's the English term, terminal, they then accepted it, and they
actually wanted to die more.
Because in a good way, because they accepted their fate and didn't have the panic of or the last resistance when there was resistance was not an option. So, but I mean, that's then we're a little bit away from that, but I think we will have maybe already in 10, 20 years, we will have to, as society, debate that. How do we view life and death in a completely new framework? And part will be what is the protocol that people somewhere who getting older and older want to die, not because they're miserable, but they want to die because they just want to see what's coming.
And it's all of these questions, to be able to talk about them freely and to be able to talk about them with nuance. I think that's one of the also meta challenges that we're facing across the board and I think we've really kind of illuminated this, is the willingness to discuss nuance, the willingness to talk about things that are unpopular and talk about things that are taboo, and not have the default reaction, and everybody has all of these default reactions about and they'll take the side of something. Like one area that people take the side of is like, you shouldn't be using, indigenous medicines. You need to reserve these for the indigenous people. And then I ask my teacher, Maestro Orlando Chuandama, who lives in a small village in Tarapoto and dedicates his life to his 6 children and all of that. And I help support his village. And what does he say? Actually, not the people on Instagram who are saying what they think, putting words in his mouth. He's saying, no, we all live on a shared earth, and ayahuasca needs to be shared to as many people as possible, especially the people who are threatening earth. And that's what Mother Gaia wants. And that's what Mother Ayahuasca wants. And so there's this weird world in which like there's this kind of woke cultural idea about 100%. What the right thing to do is, but we have to actually be able to talk about it.
Who they're talking about is not even like,
yeah, they're like, whoa.
Why don't you draw me into that? Yeah.
I mean, Sebastian Junger's book, Tribe, was very interesting. I'm reading that actually. I've known about his theory for a long time, but just speak a very simple aspect of this. He spent time speaking with a Navajo elder, and he was calling his people Native American. And he's like, you don't call us Native American because anybody born in America is actually a Native American. Like, even though Indian was the wrong name because he thought we were in India, at least it identifies us as a tribe, as a race of people, And so he actually encouraged him to say that. But then, so Junger explains that in his book, and he uses the word Indians, and people get all riled up, right? But actually, in this case, there's just nuance, and people need to unwrap all of this kind of rage and offense and sensitivity and say like, all right, let's talk about everything. Assume generally good intentions. Assume that, yes, it's not cool to wear a fucking headdress, but like a war bonnet, like a Native American war bonnet. And again, I didn't talk to the elder, so I still don't want to say Indian. I don't even know,
right? By the way, if they had, I don't know, but like I met a lot of, not Native Americans, but I met a lot of other cultures who like this whole idea of, what is it called here in America, which we don't have in Europe, thanks God, but like stealing somebody's
appropriation.
Appropriation is, they're like, it's celebrating our culture. Like, it's like, again, people are...
There's no nuance. The assumption is that this is an act of blatant racism.
Racism or mocking them.
And really, like, generally, it's like somebody who appreciates and I'm not saying that it should be done. Like, particularly with the Native American headdress thing, that's a war bonnet. Every feather was a measure of an individual's bravery. So the more acts of bravery in serving or helping one of their tribe members, they got a feather. And so that would be like somebody going out and decorating in a U.S. Marines vest with a bunch of fucking medals on it. It's called stolen valor. Like, there's things that are not cool to do, but let's just assume that they're not trying to be fucking assholes. They just may not be aware of what they're doing, and like, give a little bit of space, like a little bit of breathing room for conversations and actions. Correct them, but correct them lovingly, and say like, hey, like, I know you probably didn't know this, but check it out. Here's some of this stuff. But that just seems like the way. And unfortunately, we're in such a inflammatory time that those nuanced discussions are not happening. And instead, it's just projection and canceling and anger. And it's like, we all need to
I think the whole
relax.
Twitter mob needs MDMA. Because then you really understand the others. No, it's like, by the way, I just tried that in a relationship, and which was used.
That's where it originally
come from. It's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable.
Like, in
it changes the fucking game.
Yes. So I always tell everybody who's watching, like, before you get a divorce, before you can't repair your relationship, go for it. Doesn't cost you anything. It's very safe. Rick Doblin, big shout out. And
it's not always going to bring you guys back together. I actually was in the room for an MDMA ceremony with a couple that I knew, and they wanted to do an MDMA ceremony to see if they should stay together. And they finished the ceremony. They said, look, I really loved you, but this isn't right. This isn't for me. And both of them said that, and they separated in the most beautiful way. So it's not like it's going to force you one way or another. It's going to open your heart to the truth of what you really believe and feel. And so, yes, of course, like that, and then having that tool available, it's going to change the fucking world.
I'm going to save a lot of money for a lot of divorces.
Divorce attorneys are not going to be happy. Yeah. Well, this has been a really beautiful conversation. I really deeply appreciate everything that we've discussed. And I think people probably learned a lot of things about myself and the nuance of which I understand the world, which, shares a lot of the nuance. And we may differ on certain ideas about where we draw the line, but the things that we agree on are it's a very complicated, nuanced situation. And that in also the idea that, let's not be too hasty to project these nefarious organizations and groups and things. Like it's so difficult to coordinate something. Like even getting, like when I was in college, like even getting my fraternity to get together for a fucking meeting was like really hard.
And now,
and it's like, it's just kind of softening a lot of these different thoughts and just opening the field for nuance and a deeper understanding of things rather than the initial blush first reaction.
And I would say maybe even take away, like, if the world is a very complex and chaotic place at the end, and it's not ruled by 20, 30, 50 people, it puts way more emphasis on every individual to do the right thing in his own small community, in a bigger context. But like, sort of, I think people secretly with this whole conspiracy stuff, what I said before, they wish to simplify the world and they wish to give responsibility away because, there are people who running that they're bad, at least they're running it. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
And the truth is you are responsible.
Yeah, we're running it.
We're running it all together. Like, and everybody of us is a small piece of it, and you're responsible for yourself, for your soul, for your close friends. Like, I think that is what really should be the takeaway.
Yeah. Well, I deeply appreciate you coming on the show. And also, I also just want to say, like, as much as we've talked about the science of psychedelics and as much as we've talked in the traditional, I wouldn't be here without both, really, truly. Like, I wouldn't be here without the great traditions and the teachers from those traditions who have taught me. And I also have benefited immensely from the medical side of psychedelics, which include MDMA, which include especially ketamine. The ketamine and cannabis journeys that I've been doing have been some of the most profound in my life. And in most places, that's legal to do that right now. And I've been talking about those, and that's changed my life. And that's not in the traditional lineage. It's in a different side and prescribed to me for medical reasons, at least the ketamine, originally the cannabis, although that was a bit of a hoax about, how you get prescribed cannabis. But nonetheless, like, there's a deep appreciation that I have for all the lineage roots and just the deepest bow to that. And then there's also a deep bow to science, for what science is kind of pushing forward. And it gives me a lot of hope for how we can ease a lot of the suffering that we see in the world and a lot of the discord.
Agree.
Yeah. I guess if there's going to be one final thing, is there any crazy new psychedelic that psychonauts need to look out for coming down the pipeline? Anything, any spoiler alert about some kind of new thing that you guys have found in the lab somewhere that you're like, this fucking thing is crazy?
No, that's a short version. We're looking at new psychedelics. I'm a very big believer in sort of the first generation ones because we know so much about them. Again, and now speaking as sort of a biotech guy, yes, there are, but it's mainly about duration and stuff like that, or MDMA is a little bit neurotoxic, so you try to get that away, but it's not really the end of the world. But so you try to make them better, either in pharmacological terms or in duration, whatever. But then they're new substances and you want to test them. And we know already so much about the first generation ones. So for example, I'm not a believer in, which we're also trying, because like we have to as a company to try that hypothesis, is the trip essential? Which my answer is yes. Yeah. But like there are some people who believe, no, it's just a neuroplasticity or whatever. So there are some psychedelics in development, including within Atai, which are non-trippy. Like I don't believe in them, but like we still should have explore that. Yeah. So, but like, I think the sort of core, whatever, big five, how you want to call it, psychedelics, like psilocybin, DMT, ibogaine, whatever, they are pretty perfect. And they seem to be pretty matching what we need in life in such an all-encompassing way that it's hard. Again, and we should be thrill seekers. Like if you have something perfect, It's a little bit maybe like in a relationship. If you have something perfect,
amen.
What it ruins it is if you think there is something bad out there, and someone in life you should say, no, I think we have it.
I love this answer. That's the best answer you possibly could have given, because through the infinite divine perfection that somehow manifests through the love, intelligence, beauty of all that is, we already have these medicines, and there's ways in which you can, like I mentioned, ketamine and cannabis, and there's ways in which you can combine things in the right way that can create really potent experiences. And we're already in the paradise, and now it's about just, democratizing that paradise, giving as many people access to these medicines and access to these experiences, and shaping the world with the shift in consciousness and the shift in heart intelligence that these medicines can provide. So I'm here for it. I know that. Thank you very much. Any other final words you want to give to anybody listening?
No, I enjoyed it very much. We can always, if there are questions or people want us to discuss stuff, we can always do a second part of it.
After your, sometime later this year, and you can talk about your journey.
It's going to be end of January, so we can do it pretty soon. That's going to be very interesting. I'm very much.
I'm very excited.
I'm very much looking forward to that.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Derek. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We're out. Much love.
Thanks for tuning into this video. Make sure you hit subscribe. Follow me at Aubrey Marcus. Check out the Aubrey Marcus podcast, available everywhere. And leave a comment. Let me know if this video resonated or what else you would like to hear from me in the future. Thank you so much.